Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Uh, a lot of this, right now we're entering into, whether it looks like it or not, we're right in the middle of a developmental phase, not a cruising period. Because a lot of times, if we don't mention it, you may not even be able to tell the difference between we're just cruising and now a developmental stage. But I want to read our favorite ayat just to Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Who is that better in speech than one who calls men to Allah, works righteous deeds, and say, I am of those who bow in Islam. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّا دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَاتُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَاتُ أَدْفَعُ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Nor can goodness and evil be equal, repel evil with what is better. Then will be between he and between whom is and thee was hatred become, as it were, a friend and intimate. And no one will be granted such goodness except those who exercise patience and self-restraint, none but persons of the greatest good fortune. I mentioned this because this is technically for the next phase. This is, it has been, but this is our working ayat or a series of ayats, and it'll kind of fit into our evolution. During the war, the Revolutionary War, there was a book called, I mentioned it to y'all before, the Book of Negroes. The Book of Negroes was a book the British kept of American blacks that collaborated with them. And of course, they lost the Revolutionary War. So the Negroes, they took them to Canada first, and you could imagine how they treated them up there. And then they distributed them probably somewhere down in the southern hemisphere. But they were free and liberated. During the Civil War, I guess it was 170,000, something like that, black people that participated, and they, you know. And right after that, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, especially the 10th Cavalry, I know for sure, were technically Buffalo soldiers. And so one thing you never saw in the West or in the old movies when we was coming up was black soldiers. The cavalry, when they blow the bugle, they always white folks come running. The only one that I saw was an old one, Sergeant Rutledge. Yeah, Sergeant Rutledge. That was old. That must have been 61 or 60, so way back then. And I just happened to go in the movies, and I was a kid. I was just shocked. Why, they had black people in the army in those days, good God Almighty. And it was funny because, anyway, we won't stick on that. Then World War One, the most decorated soldiers in World War One was black soldiers, but they fought in French uniform with French uniforms. They were highly decorated. That's why after World War One, musicians and other people went to Paris because they were accepted and they were liked, you know. You got to remember the French had lost 1,000,000 men, and they was looking around and they had the Negroes digging ditches and everything. They said, well, could we have those guys? Said, sure, you can have them niggas. So they fought so hard and was so well accepted. Imagine white folks not making a distinction in your color in 1917. Now, when they got back over here, some of the biggest lynchings was 1919. That was a big year because they got back and they thought they had something coming. And that was an old song. They pretended it was about white folks, but it was how you gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris. You know, so they was that was a jingle, and they had everybody thinking. Until I realized, till I got grown, I thought it was about white folks. How you gonna keep all them white folks down on the farm after they've seen Paris? But it was really about Negroes. How you gonna keep them niggas down in Mississippi and Tennessee after they've traveled all the way over in Europe and been treated like human beings and loved? And they come back here with a different view of white folks, but when they got back here, the white folks was the same and worse. In fact, they wanted to let them know for sure, whatever you experienced over there, you a nigger here. And they hung one of the brothers down where I'm from in Arkansas in his uniform with all of his medals on his chest, just to let people know. So World War One was a bust. World War II was similar. But if anybody ever heard of the double V, the double V, victory overseas and victory here. It was popular in the Pittsburgh Courier, all the black newspapers. We're going to have victory against the Nazis, but we're going to have victory here. So for black people, it was a double V, victory over there and victory here. And when the Negro got back here, he realized, I mean, with his overwhelming record, and even the head guy had his plane, wrote on his plane by request, you know, for the Red Tails. And they just put up a good fight. They cut these bombers' losses to zero almost. Not zero, like none, but way down. And Korea and Vietnam wasn't much better, except Martin Luther King says our young men can die in foxholes together in Vietnam, but they can't go in schools and restaurants together over here. It made a little sense. But now, you know, this tough weed turning everything over to Allah, and, and then Rida, being pleased with what you have. I want to kind of outline technically where we are right now. And we're at the stage where we have really turned things over to Allah. Now, this has been a theme of ours for, we've been feeling this where we are right now. But basically, my belief where we are right now is that we're not going to put up a whole lot of resistance to what's happening right now. My belief is that operationally, that and according to the time framework and other things that are happening, that a lot of things that we visualized before, I believe we may not have time to do those things. Example, homelessness, getting around to all the universities and talk. We're going to have to get these DVDs around and some kind of way get into the feel of black people joining up with the system for their own protection, but we never know. That time just may may not come. So here's what we are right now. This tough weed, turning everything over to Allah. That means you're planning your future and all of that, which is difficult for somebody that have always planned. And a few years ago, we started releasing, like our discipline. We have articles on planning and leadership and all that stuff. We actually believe in it because that's how we survived. When we left, we had a plan when we left. When we come back, we kind of had a plan. When we came out of the penitentiary, we had a plan. We can go over our old articles and the plan is right there, like this right here. From opening the Masjid, what we was going to do, and da 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 da. But now Tafweed, we've talked about Tafweed and Rida. Tafweed is turning, Wafada means you turn everything over to Allah. That don't mean you don't plan. You got to have a plan for tomorrow. I mean, you could get up bumping in the walls and not, it don't mean, it means your major moves in life, you're turning that over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was years ago. And this is what helped actualize these series of ayats, because it gave us a feeling of where we had to be, where our attitude had to be. Let me try to, I don't particularly believe that right now we have time to rescue America from its acceleration is just, maybe others may not pick it up, but my feeling is this boy is accelerating. If he had to choose how to look like a fool and how to mess up his whole future, he'd been doing it. Now, it started way back. It wasn't Donald Trump that kicked it off, but as Donald Trump kicked in, I remember making a statement. First, it was light, like Donald Trump is here to destroy the Republican Party. No, Donald Trump is here, I don't know if anybody remember, to bring down America. And his weight is still here. He's still, that all is not like he ain't went nowhere. And then if you had to choose who would be the worst person to put in a job after Donald Trump, it would be this man here. It's almost like you feel sorry for him or something. You know, like, dog, man, you know, like he can't, every time he comes up to bat, he strikes out. They ought to just call him out before he go.